Gosai Maharaj, Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Vishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashitashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashitashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Vishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashitashmar Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashitashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Srila Gokshwadas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vaishnava Jagannath Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopashad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Lahairas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अविश्व विराते गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी माय की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ग्रंथराज Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam की जय. Also today is appearance day of Krishnadas from Akai Hat. I don't know anything about him, but I'll see if I can find anything when we're finished reading. So I'm running a bit late today, that's why I'm scanning the pages, but we'll read. Alright, let me just share my screen. Mangalachara. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Viṣṇu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Narayaniti Namine. Namo Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Natvancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratise Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Itadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Kritam Tapayano Virahaka Tara Ajuhavo Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Binedustam Sarvabhuta Vidyam Mimanatosmi Naramaskritya Naram Chaiva Narot Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vedantasto Yabhadrani Vedunoti Surisatam Prayashvavadeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Vaivasmi Tavaivasmi Najivani Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshai Kshiptashtaka Madhitarangamadhe Kripamai tvam sharanam prapanna vrinde namaste charanarvindam. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so just a little recap. Lord Shiva creates Virabhadra and orders him to destroy Dakṣa. Then Virabhadra associates a re-sacrificial arena, and then there's destruction of Dakṣa's sacrifice by Shiva's followers, and Virabhadra tore off Bhṛgu's mustache, plucked out Bhaga's eyes, knocked out Pusha's teeth, and beheaded Dakṣa. Then Lord Brahma satisfies Lord Shiva. Then the demigods inform Brahma about all the mishap. Brahma says, "You cannot be happy after offending a great personality. Pacify Lord Shiva by falling at his feet and beg his pardon. No one knows his glories." Then Brahma takes the demigods to Lord Shiva's abode, Kailash, and then there's a description of the beautiful varieties, plants, herbs, animals, and demigods on Kailash Hill. And then within Kailash, there's the description of Alaka region. There's a Sugandhika forest, the Nanda and Alakanda rivers, and the demigods' enjoyment there. And then so it's like zooming in. So first you get Kailash Hill, then the Alaka region within Kailash, and then there's and you zoom in even further. There's a description of the banyan tree, which is super high, super tall, and very extended, very wide. And Shiva was sitting gravely under that banyan tree in Virasan, showing the Tarka Mudra, surrounded by the Kumaras, Kuvera, and Narad, with an audience of great yogis. Seeing Brahma, Lord Shiva offered his respects. Then Brahma glorifies Lord Shiva, saying, "You create this universe, the symptoms of sacrifice and varnashram. You ordain various destinations. Sadhus are compassionate, so please spare sinful Dakṣa, who is influenced by Maya. Please accept your sacrificial share and revive Dakṣa, Bhaga, Bhṛgu, Pusha, and the demigods." And then, this is what we read yesterday. Thus being pacified by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva smiling spoke as follows. "I do not mind the offenses of the demigods, as they are childish and less intelligent. I have punished them only to correct them." Note, there are two kinds of punishment. Sorry, one second. There are two kinds of punishment. That which a conqueror imposes upon an enemy, and that which a father imposes on his son. Here, Lord Shiva is not acting inimically, but as a father. So then Lord Shiva fulfills the request of Lord Brahma partially. He said, "Let Dakṣa have a goat's head, since he had the words and intelligence of a goat. Let Bhaga see his portion of the sacrifice with Mitra's eyes, since his eyes were contaminated with fault, devoid of spiritual vision. Let Pusha chew through the teeth of his disciples, or Dakṣa, or eat chickpea dough as if he is alone, since he has shown his teeth at the devotees and laughed at them. Let the demigods who agreed to give me my share have their limbs restored, since they did not side with Dakṣa when Dakṣa criticized me. Let the priest and others work with the arms of the Ashwini Kumars and the hands of Pusha, since they favored Dakṣa, raising their arms and shouting. Let Bhṛgu have the mustache of a goat, since he was the chief advisor of Dakṣa. All assembled people heard the words of Lord Śiva, the best among the benedictors, and approved, saying, Sadhu, sadhu. The demigods and the sages, headed by Bhṛgu, invited Shiva and went with him and Brahma back to the sacrificial arena. After everything was executed exactly as directed by Lord Shiva, Dakṣa's body was joined to the head of the sacrificial animal, the goat. Then Dakṣa suddenly awoke, as if from sleep, and saw Shiva in front of him. Dakṣa's heart, which had been contaminated by hatred of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed like a lake cleansed by autumn rains. Dakṣa wanted to offer prayers to Lord Shiva, but as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter, his eyes filled with tears, and he could not speak. Pacifying his mind with great endeavor, he came to his senses and began to praise Lord Shiva sincerely. Okay, that's where we read up to. Oh no, my voice is choppy. Is it still choppy? Let me know. And by the way, Dandavat pranams for Juna Prabhu, Gargaraj, Madhavi Devi, Raseshwari Mataji, Jai Shri Radhe. Okay, let's start. Oops. What? I thought I had this open. That's so strange. I had it already, and then it disappeared. Sorry, guys. Okay, 12. Okay, so Dakṣa uvacha Bhuyan aho bhavata krito me dandastvaya mayi brito yadapi pralabdha na brahma bandushu chavam bhagavan avagya tubhyam harishcha kuta eva drita vrateshu. King Dakṣa said, My dear Lord Shiva, I committed a great offense against you, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Viṣṇu never neglect even useless, unqualified Brahmins. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Dakṣa felt defeated, he knew that his punishment was simply the great mercy of Lord Shiva. He remembered that Lord Shiva and Lord Viṣṇu are never neglectful of the Brahmins, even though the Brahmins are sometimes unqualified. According to Vedic civilization, a descendant of a Brahmin family should never be heavily punished. This is exemplified in Arjuna's treatment of Ashvatthama. Ashvatthama was the son of a great Brahmin, Dronacharya, and in despite of his having committed the great offense of killing all the sleeping sons of the Pandavas, for which he was condemned even by Lord Krishna, Arjuna excused him by not killing him because he happened to be the son of a Brahmin. The word Brahma Bandushu used here is significant. Brahma Bandhu means a person who is born of a Brahmin father, but whose activities are not up to the standard of the Brahmins. Such a person is not a Brahmin, but a Brahma Bandhu. Dakṣa proved himself to be a Brahma Bandhu. He was born of a great Brahmin father, Lord Brahma, but his treatment of Lord Shiva was not exactly Brahminical. Therefore, he admitted that he was not a perfect Brahmin. Lord Shiva and Lord Viṣṇu, however, are affectionate even to an imperfect Brahmin. Lord Shiva punished Dakṣa not as one does his enemy. Rather, he punished Dakṣa just to bring him to his senses, so that he would know that he had done wrong. Dakṣa could understand this, and he acknowledged the great mercy of Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva towards the fallen Brahmins, including even himself. Although he was fallen, his vow was to execute the sacrifice, as is the duty of Brahmins, and thus he began his prayers to Lord Shiva. Let me see if the choppy... Oh, I had it open here. Anyhow. Let's see if the choppy problem. Okay, it got better. That's good. Vidatapo vratadaran mukutasma vipran brahmatma tattamavitum pratamam tamasrak tad brahmanam param sarva vipatsu. Oh, sorry. Tad brahmanan parama sarva vipatsu pasi pala pashun iva vipo pragrihita danda. My dear, great and powerful Lord Shiva, you are created first from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmins in pursuing education, austerity, vows, and self-realization. As protector of the Brahmins, you always protect the regulative principles they follow, just as a cowherd boy keeps a stick in his hand to give protection to the cows. Purport. The specific function of a human being in society, irrespective of his social status, is to practice control of the mind and senses by observing the regulative principles enjoined in the Vedic Shastras. Lord Shiva is called Pashupati because he protects the living entities in their developed consciousness so that they may follow the Vedic system of Varna and Ashram. The word Pashu refers to the animal as well as to the human entity. It is stated here that Lord Shiva is always interested in protecting the animals and the animalistic living entities who are not very advanced in the spiritual sense. It is also stated that the Brahmins are produced from the mouth of the Supreme Lord. We should always remember that Lord Shiva is being addressed as the representative of the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu. In the Vedic literature, it is described that the Brahmins are born from the mouth of the universal form of Viṣṇu. The Kshatriyas are born from his arms, the Vaishyas from his abdomen or waist, and the Shudras from his legs. In the formation of a body, the head is the principal factor. The Brahmins are born from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to accept charity for worship of Viṣṇu and to spread Vedic knowledge. Lord Shiva is known as Pashupati, the protector of the Brahmins and other living entities. He protects them from the attacks of non-Brahmins, or uncultured persons who are against the self-realization process. Another feature of this word is that persons who are simply attached to the ritualistic portion of the Vedas and do not understand the situation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not any more advanced than animals. In the beginning of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is confirmed that even though one performs the ritual of the Vedas, if he does not develop a sense of Krishna consciousness, then all his labor in performing Vedic rituals is considered to be simply a waste of time. Lord Shiva's aim in destroying the Dakṣa Yajna was to punish Dakṣa because by neglecting him, Lord Shiva, Dakṣa was committing a great offense. Lord Shiva's punishment was just like that of a cowherd boy who keeps a stick to frighten his animals. It is commonly said that to give protection to animals, a stick is needed because animals cannot reason and argue. Their reasoning and argument is argumentum ad baculum. I don't know how you say that. What is that? Argumentum ad baculum is the fallacy committed when one makes an appeal to force or threat. It's when one makes an appeal to force or threat of force to bring about the acceptance of a conclusion. One participates in argumentum ad baculum when one points out the negative consequences of holding the contrary position. It is a specific case of the negative form of an argument to the consequences. Okay. Their reasoning and argument is argumentum ad baculum. Unless there is a rod, they do not obey. Force is required for the animalistic class of men, whereas those who are advanced are convinced by reasons. Arguments, and scriptural authority. Persons who are simply attached to Vedic rituals without further advancement of devotional service or Krishna consciousness are almost like animals, and Lord Shiva is in charge of giving them protection and sometimes punishing them, as he punished Dakṣa. Yoso maya vidita tattva drisha sabhayam kshipta durukti vishikar vignaya tarma. got it, messed up. Kshipta durukti vishikar viganayatanman arvak patantam arhatama nindaya pad. God, having a hard time reading. Drishtartraya sabhagavan sakritena tushyet. I did not know your full glories. For this reason, I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality, but you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding me punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. Purport. As usual, a devotee in an adverse condition of life accepts such a condition to be the mercy of the Lord. Factually, the insulting words used by Dakṣa against Lord Śiva were enough to have him thrown perpetually into a hellish life. But Lord Śiva, being kind towards him, awarded him punishment to neutralize the offense. King Dakṣa realized this, and feeling obliged for Lord Śiva's magnanimous behavior, wanted to show his gratitude. Sometimes the father punishes his child, and when the child is grown up and comes to his senses, he understands that the father's punishment was not actually punishment, but mercy. Similarly, Dakṣa appreciated that the punishment offered to him by Lord Śiva was a manifestation of Lord Śiva's mercy. That is a symptom of a person making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness. It is said that a devotee in Krishna consciousness never takes any miserable condition of life to be condemnation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He accepts the miserable condition to be the grace of the Lord. He thinks, I would have been punished or put into a more dangerous condition of life due to my past misdeeds, but the Lord has protected me. Thus I have received only a little punishment as a token of execution of the law of karma. Thinking of his grace in that way, a devotee always surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead more and more seriously and is not disturbed by such so-called punishment. Maitreya uvacha kshamapyaivam sa midvasam brahmana chanumantrita karma santanayam asa sopadhyayartvigadivi sopadhyayartvigadivi. Difficult words. The great sage Maitreya said, thus being pardoned by Lord Śiva, King Dakṣa, with the permission of Lord Brahma, again began the performance of the yajna, along with the great learned sages, the priests, and others. Vaishnavam yagya santatyai trikapalam dvijotama purodasha niravapan vira samsarga shudaye. Thereafter, in order to resume the activities of sacrifice, the Brahmins first arranged to purify the sacrificial arena of the contamination caused by the touch of Virabhadra and the other ghostly followers of Lord Śiva. Then they arranged to offer into the fire the oblations known as Purodasha. Purport. Lord Śiva's followers and devotees, headed by Virabhadra, are known as Viras, and they are ghostly demons. Not only did they pollute the entire sacrificial arena by their very presence, but they disturbed the whole situation by passing stool and urine. Therefore, the infection they had created was to be first purified by the method of offering Purodasha oblations. A Viṣṇu yajna, or an offering to Lord Viṣṇu, cannot be performed uncleanly. To offer anything in an unclean state is called sevaparad. The worship of the Viṣṇu deity in the temple is also Viṣṇu yajna. In all Viṣṇu temples, therefore, the priest who takes care of the archan vidhi must be very clean. Everything should be always kept neat and clean, and the foodstuffs should be prepared in a neat and clean manner. All these regulative principles are described in the Nectar of Devotion. There are 32 kinds of offenses in discharging archana service. It is required, therefore, that one be extremely careful not to be unclean. Generally, whenever any ritualistic ceremony is begun, the holy name of Lord Viṣṇu is first chanted in order to purify the situation. Whether one is in a pure or impure condition, internally or externally, if one chants or even remembers the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Viṣṇu, one immediately becomes purified. The yajna arena was desecrated by the presence of Lord Shiva's followers headed by Virabhadra, and therefore the entire arena had to be sanctified. Although Lord Shiva was present and he is all auspicious, it was still necessary to sanctify the place because his followers had broken into the arena and committed so many obnoxious acts. The sanctification was possible only by chanting the holy name of Viṣṇu, Trikapal, which can sanctify the three worlds. In other words, it is admitted herein that the followers of Lord Shiva are generally unclean. They are not even very hygienic. They do not take baths regularly. They wear long hair and they smoke ganja. Persons of such irregular habits are counted among the ghosts. Since they were present in the sacrificial arena, the atmosphere became polluted, and it had to be sanctified by Trikapal oblations, which indicated the invocation of Vishnu's favor. Advaryunataha visha yajamana vishampate Diya Vishuddhaya Dadyo Tatta Pradurabhuddhari. The great sage Maitreya said to Vidura, "My dear Vidura, as soon as King Dakṣa offered the clarified butter with Yajurveda mantras and sanctified meditation, Lord Viṣṇu appeared there in his original form as Narayan." Purport. Lord Viṣṇu is all-pervading. Any devotee who, in sanctified meditation, following the regulative principles, chants the required mantras and service and in a devotional mood, can see Viṣṇu. It is said in the Brahma Samhita that a devotee whose eyes are anointed with the ointment of love of Godhead can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead always within his heart. Lord Shyamasundar is so kind to his devotee. Just checking if the connection is okay. Seems like it. Tadasa prabhayate shantyottayantya disha dasha mushnang steja upanitas takshena stotravajina. Lord Narayan was seated on the shoulder of Stotra, or Garuda, who had big wings. As soon as the Lord appeared, all directions were illuminated, diminishing the luster of Brahma and the others present. Purport. A description of Narayan is given in the following two shlokas. Shamo hirana rashanorkat kirita jushto nilaka brahmara mandita kundalasya shankabja chakra sharachapa gadasi charma vyagrar hiran maya bhujar ivakarnikara. His complexion was blackish, his garments yellow like gold, and his helmet as dazzling as the sun. His hair was bluish, the color of black bees, and his face was decorated with earrings. His 8 hands held a conch shell, wheel, club, lotus flower, arrow, bow, shield, and sword, and they were decorated with golden ornaments such as bangles and bracelets. His whole body resembled a blossoming tree, beautifully decorated with various kinds of flowers. Purports. The face of Lord Viṣṇu, as described in this verse, appears like a lotus flower with bees humming over it. All of the ornaments on the body of Lord Viṣṇu resemble molten gold of the reddish gold color of the morning sunrise. The Lord appears just as the morning sun rises to protect the whole universal creation. His arms display different weapons, and his 8 hands are compared to the 8 petals of a lotus flower. All the weapons mentioned are for the protection of his devotees. Generally, in the 4 hands of Viṣṇu, there are the wheel, club, conch shell, and lotus flower. These 4 symbols are seen in the 4 hands of Viṣṇu in different arrangements. The club and wheel are the Lord's symbols of punishment for the demons and miscreants, and the lotus flower and conch shell are used to bless the devotees. There are always two classes of men, the devotees and the demons. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya Sadhunam, the Lord is always ready for the protection of the devotees and annihilation of the demons. There are demons and devotees in this material world, but in the spiritual world, there is no such distinction. In other words, Lord Viṣṇu is the proprietor of both the material and spiritual worlds. In the material world, almost everyone is of the demoniac nature, but there are also devotees who appear to be in the material world, although they are always situated in the spiritual world. A devotee's position is always transcendental, and he is always protected by Lord Viṣṇu. Vakshasya Shrita Vadur Vanamaludara Hasavaloka Kalanaya Ramyangscha Vishvam Parshva Brahmar Vyajana Chamara Rajahangsa Shvetatta Patra Shashino Parirajyamana. Lord Viṣṇu looked extraordinarily beautiful because of the goddess of fortune and let me reread that. Lord Viṣṇu looked extraordinarily beautiful because the goddess of fortune and a garland were situated on his chest. His face was beautifully decorated with a smiling attitude which can captivate the entire world, especially the devotees. Fans of white hair appeared on both sides of the Lord like white swans, and the white canopy overhead looked like the moon. Purport. The smiling face of Lord Viṣṇu is pleasing to the whole world. Not only devotees, but even non-devotees are attracted by such a smile. This verse nicely describes how the sun, moon, 8-petaled lotus flower, and humming black bees were represented by the fans of hair, the overhead canopy, the moving earrings on both sides of his face, and his blackish hair. All together, accompanied by the conch shell, wheel, club, lotus flower, bow, arrows, shield, and sword in his hands. These presented a grand and beautiful audience for Lord Viṣṇu, which captivated all the demigods there, including Dakṣa and Lord Brahma. Tam upagatam alakshya sarve sura ganadaya pranemo sahasotaya brahmendra Dakṣa. As soon as Lord Viṣṇu was visible, all the demigods, Lord Brahma and Lord Śiva, the Gandharvas, and all present there, immediately offered their respectful obeisances by falling down straight before him. Purport. It appears that Lord Viṣṇu is the Supreme Lord even of Lord Śiva and Lord Brahma. What to speak of the demigods, Gandharvas, and ordinary living entities? It is stated in a prayer, Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Maruta. All the demigods worship Lord Viṣṇu. Similarly, Dhyana Vastitatar Gatina Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogina. Yogis concentrate their minds on the form of Lord Viṣṇu. Thus, Lord Viṣṇu is worshipable by all demigods, all Gandharvas, and even Lord Śiva and Lord Brahma. Tad Viṣṇu Paramam Param Sada Pashyanti Suraya. Viṣṇu is therefore the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though Lord Śiva was previously referred to in prayers by Lord Brahma as the Supreme, when Lord Viṣṇu appeared, Śiva also fell prostrated before him to offer respectful obeisances. Tat tejasa hatarucha sanajiva sasadvasa murdhna dhritanjali puta upatastur adhoksajam. In the presence of the glaring effulgence of the bodily luster of Narayan, everyone else's luster faded away, and everyone stopped speaking. Fearful with awe and veneration, all present touched their hands to their heads and prepared to offer their prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Adhoksaj. Apyavargvrittayo yasya mahitvatma bhuvadaya yatamati grananti sma Kritanugraha Vigraham. Although the mental scope of even demigods like Brahma was unable to comprehend the unlimited glories of the Supreme Lord, they were all able to perceive the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by His grace. Only by such grace could they offer their respectful obeisances according to their different capacities. Purport. The Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is always unlimited, and His glories cannot be completely enumerated by anyone, even by a personality like Lord Brahma. It is said that Ananta, a direct incarnation of the Lord, has unlimited mouths, and with each mouth he has been trying to describe the glories of the Lord for an unlimited span of time. Yet the glories of the Lord remain unlimited, and He therefore never finishes. It is not possible for any ordinary living entity to understand or to glorify the unlimited personality of Godhead, but one can offer prayers or service to the Lord according to one's particular capacity. This capacity is increased by the service spirit. Sevon Mukhe Jiva Do means that the service of the Lord begins with the tongue. This refers to chanting. By chanting Hare Krishna, one begins the service of the Lord. Another function of the tongue is to taste and accept the Lord's prasad. We have to begin our service to the unlimited with the tongue and become perfect in chanting and accepting the Lord's prasad. To accept the Lord's prasad means to control the entire set of senses. The tongue is considered to be the most uncontrollable sense because it hankers for so many unwholesome eatables, thereby forcing the living entity into the dungeon of material conditional life. As the living entity transmigrates from one form of life to another, he has to eat so many abominable foodstuffs that finally there is no limit. The tongue should be engaged in chanting and in eating the Lord's prasad so that the other senses will be controlled. Chanting is the medicine, and prasad is the diet. With these processes, one can begin his service, and as the service increases, the Lord reveals more and more to the devotee. But there is no limits to His glories, and there is no limits to engaging oneself in the service of the Lord. I just want to see the translation again. All able to perceive. It's interesting that Srila Prabhupada is talking about prasad here. To do with the tongue. Okay. Alright. Dakṣa grihitarhana sadhanuttamam yageshwaram vishwasrijam param gurum sunandanandadyanugar vritam muda grinan prapede prayata kritanjali. When Lord Viṣṇu accepted the oblations offered in the sacrifice, Dakṣa, the Prajapati, began with great pleasure to offer respectful prayers unto him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the master of all sacrifices and preceptor of all the Prajapatis, and he is served even by such personalities as Nanda and Sunanda. Dakṣa uvacha Shudam Swadamya Uparatakila Buddhavastam Chinmatramekam Abhayan Pratishidamayan Tishtang Tayaiva Purushatvam Aste Bhavan Aparishuddha Ivatmatantra. Dakṣa addressed the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear Lord, you are transcendental to all speculative positions. You are completely spiritual, devoid of all fear, and you are always in control of the material energy. Even though you appear in the material energy, you are situated transcendentally. You are always free from material contamination because you are completely self-sufficient. Ritvija uchu Tatvamnate vayamananjana rudra shapat karmanya vagrah diyo bhagavan vidama karmanya vagraha diyo bhagavan vidama dharma palakshanamidam trivridadvarakyam gyatvam yadartam aditaiva mado vyavasta. The priest addressed the Lord, saying, so first Dakṣa prayed to the Lord, now the priest addressed the Lord, O Lord, transcendental to material contamination, by the curse offered by Lord Shiva's men, we have become attached to the fruit of activities. We've become attached to fruit of activities, and thus we are now fallen, and therefore do not know anything about you. On the contrary, we are now involved in the injunctions of the 3 departments of the Vedic knowledge, under the plea of executing rituals in the name of Yajna. We know that you have made arrangements for distributing the respective shares of the demigods. Purport. The Vedas are known as Trigunya Vishaya Veda. Those who are serious students of the Vedas are very much attached to the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas, and therefore these Vedavadis cannot understand that the ultimate goal of the Vedas is to understand Lord Krishna, or Viṣṇu. Those who have transcended the qualitative Vedic attractions, however, can understand Krishna, who is never contaminated by the material qualities. Therefore, Lord Viṣṇu is addressed here as Ananjana, free from material contamination. In Bhagavad Gita 2.42, the crude Vedic scholars have been deprecated by Krishna as follows. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipashchita veda vada rata partha nanyar astiti vadina. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, and they say that there is nothing more than this. Sadasya uchu utpattavanga asharana. Oh my God. Pata advana asharana uruklesha durgenta kogra vyalanvishte vishaya mrigatrishatma gehorubara. I don't know the meter for this. Dvandva shabre kalamriga bhaye shokadave gyasarta pado kaste sharanada kadayati kamo pasishta. Sorry about that. The members of the assembly addressed the Lord. O exclusive shelter for all who are situated in troubled life, in this formidable court of conditional existence in the God. Let me start over. O exclusive shelter for all who are situated in troubled life, in this formidable fort of conditional existence, the time element, like a snake, is always looking for an opportunity to strike. This world is full of ditches of so-called distress and happiness, and there are many ferocious animals always ready to attack. The fire of lamentation is always blazing, and the mirage of false happiness is always alluring. But one has no shelter from them. Thus foolish persons live in the cycle of birth and death, always overburdened in discharging their so-called duties, and we do not know when they will accept the shelter of your lotus feet. Purport. Persons who are not in Krishna consciousness are living a very precarious life, as described in this verse. But all these circumstantial conditions are due to forgetfulness of Krishna. The Krishna consciousness movement is meant to give relief to all these bewildered and distressed persons. Therefore, it is the greatest relief work for all human society, and the workers thereof are the greatest well-wishers, for they follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, who is the greatest friend to all living entities. Rudra uvacha Tavavarada varahangrav ashishekankilarte yapi munibir asakter adare nahanye yadirachita diyam mavidyalokapavidam japati naganaye tatvat paranugrahena. Lord Śiva said, My dear Lord, my mind and consciousness are always fixed on your lotus feet, which, as the source of all benediction and the fulfillment of all desires, are worshipped by all liberated sages because your lotus feet are worthy of worship. With my mind fixed on your lotus feet, I am no longer disturbed by persons who blaspheme me, claiming that my activities are not purified. I do not mind their accusations, and I excuse them out of compassion, just as you exhibit compassion toward all living entities. Purport. Lord Shiva expresses herein his regret at having been angry and having disturbed the sacrificial activities of Dakṣa. King Dakṣa had insulted him in many ways, and thus he had become angry and had frustrated the entire sacrificial ceremony. Later, when he was pleased, the yajna performances were reinstituted, and therefore he regretted his activities. Now he says that because his mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu, he is no longer disturbed by the ordinary critics of his way of life. From this statement by Lord Shiva, it is understood that as long as one is on the material platform, one is affected by the three modes of material nature. As soon as one is in Krishna consciousness, however, one is no longer affected by such material activities. One should therefore always be fixed in Krishna consciousness, busy in a transcendental loving service of the Lord. It is guaranteed that such a devotee will never be affected by the actions and reactions of the three material modes of nature. This fact is also corroborated in Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who is fixed in the transcendental service of the Lord has surpassed all the material qualities and is situated in the status of Brahman realization, in which one is not afflicted by hankering for material objects. The recommendation of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is that one should always be in Krishna consciousness and should never forget his transcendental relationship with the Lord. This program has to be followed strictly by everyone. From the statement of Lord Shiva, it is understood that he is always in Krishna consciousness, and thus he remained free from material affliction. The only remedy, therefore, is to continue Krishna consciousness rigidly in order to get out of the contamination of the material modes. Okay, we're ending with this verse. Bhṛgu yanmayaya kahanaya pahritatma bodha pramadaya stanubritas tamasi swapanta natman shritam tava vidhantadunapitatvam sayam prasidatu bhavan pranatatma bandhu. Sri Bhṛgu said, "My dear Lord, all living entities beginning from the highest, namely Lord Brahma, down to the ordinary ant, are under the influence of the insurmountable spell of illusory energy, and thus they are ignorant of their constitutional position. Everyone believes in the concept of the body, and all are thus submerged in the darkness of illusion. They are actually unable to understand how you live in every living entity as a supersoul, nor can they understand your absolute position. But you are the eternal friend and protector of all surrendered souls. Therefore, please be kind towards us and forgive all our offenses." Purport. Bhṛgu Muni was conscious of the scandalous behavior exhibited by each and every one of them, including Brahma and Lord Shiva in the sacrificial ceremony of Dakṣa. By mentioning Brahma, the chief of all living entities within this material world, he wanted to state that everyone, including also Brahma and Lord Shiva, is under the concept of the body and under the spell of material energy, all but Viṣṇu. That is the version of Bhṛgu. As long as one is under the concept of the body as self, it is very difficult to understand the Supersoul or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Conscious that he was not greater than Brahma, Bhṛgu included himself in the list of offenders. Ignorant personalities or conditioned souls have no choice but to accept their precarious condition under material nature. The only remedy is to surrender to Viṣṇu and always pray to be excused. One should depend only on the causeless mercy of the Lord for deliverance, and not even slightly on one's own strength. That is the perfect position of a Krishna-conscious person. The Lord is everyone's friend, but he is especially friendly to the surrendered soul. The simple process, therefore, is that a conditioned soul should remain surrendered to the Lord, and the Lord will give him all protection to keep him out of the clutches of material contamination. All right, so tomorrow we will read, let me see, I sent this to Indira Mataji. We're going to read the prayers to Lord Viṣṇu by Brahma, Indra, the wives of the performers of sacrifice, the sages, siddhas, Prasuti, the Lokapals, Yogeshwars, the great mystics, Vedas personified, Agni, the fire god, and the demigods. And then after that, there'll be more prayers, and then finally the conclusion of this whole story. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna.
It's 8 o'clock.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Guranga Gandhar Vikagiri Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashatara Shata Shishimachala Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Maha Bhagavat Shila Bhaksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai, Namachai Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sarva Abhishtabhadata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Ki Jai, Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai, Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Okay. Shri Gaur Gadadhar Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Jai Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Om Vrindai Tulsidevai, Priyai Keshavasya Krishna Bhakti Padadevi, Sattvatai Namo Namaha, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So in 2 days from now, we will finish this chapter. And then next will come the story of Dhruva Maharaj. But we'll see, because Indira Mataji, she fell a bit behind, and so she was asking if we could read a bit slower. So I thought maybe when we finish this chapter, if she hasn't caught up with us by then maybe we can take a couple days to read something, maybe the glories of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, or maybe about Ramachandra. Oh yeah, Ram Navami is coming up, isn't it? No, it's Ram Navami is still in a while. Okay, Ram Navami is in 10 days, Kamada Akadashi is in 12 days, and Purnima is in 16 days. Baladev Rasyatra. All right. Jai Shri Radhe, Hari Bol. See you all tomorrow.